Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Samech Beis Amud Aleph, 62a of Mesaches Kiddushin, and we are starting 4 lines down on the page. Second word on the line is Bishlama, and we are continuing to discuss the machlokes, the dispute between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel as to whether it is necessary when making a condition to make it a Tanai Kafel, a doubled condition, to present both sides. If you do this, then this, and if you do that, then that. Do you have to say both sides, or can we infer one from the other? So Rabbi Meir holds you need a Tanai Kafel. You need to always express both sides of the condition, and Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says you do not. So the Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. It makes sense. The following makes sense according to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Hainu d'chsev. That's what the verse says with regards to a sota, when they're warning the sota who secluded herself with another man other than her husband and was warned and is taken to the Beis HaMikdash, and the Kohen gives her certain warnings before they give her the sota waters to drink. And one of the warnings he says is, Im lo shachav ishosach, if a man did not lie with you, the concern is that she secluded herself with a man, which is a problem on its own. But the question is whether they committed adultery or not. So he says, if no man lied with you, v'imlo satis tuma tachas yishechem, if you did not stray in acts of impurity under your husband, hinaki, you shall be clean. And there it says, if you did not stray, you shall be clean from the cursed waters. It doesn't say, but it doesn't say the other side. It doesn't say, but if you did sin, then you won't be clean. You'll choke. So according to Rabbi Gamliel, we can infer it. Elo Rabbi Meir, but according to Rabbi Meir, chinaki mi ba'ilei. It should say chinaki, not hinaki, you'll be clean, but chinaki. It should present the other side, that you'll choke if you choke to death if you sinned. It doesn't say the other side. It's not a Tanai Kafel. It's not a doubled condition. Now, the truth is that the Torah does go on, and it does express, what would happen if she did sin. So it's a little bit difficult to understand what the question is in the first place. Again, the question seems to be, if it only presents one side, it really presents both sides. So Rashi is bothered by this, and Rashi explains that the Gemara understood that there's 2 oaths that we're making her take. This is the first one, V'ishpia osa, and the Kohen will make her take an oath. Subsequently, when it talks about what if she did wrong, it says that he'll make her take an oath of an Allah, a shvuas ha'Allah, an oath that has a curse along with it. So these are 2 different oaths that she's taking. One an oath with the curse, one without. This is the first one without. And so on this one that's without, that's where we have this question. This first oath, he only presents one side of the coin to her. He only says, if you did not sin, then you're clean. He doesn't say, but if you did clean, then you'll choke. So this is a question on Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Tanchum says, hinaki ksiv. The way it's written, hinaki, you'll be clean, is without a vav. It could have had, it should have had a vav. Sorry, not a vav, a yud. It should have had a yud in, in between the hey and the yud and the nun. So why is there hinaki? You'll be clean. It should have had the yud there. The reason why it didn't was because it wanted you to be able to read hinaki as chinaki. You'll choke. You'll be strangled. And the reason it wanted you to be able to read that is to read it as also that he's presenting that the other side is there too. That you can read it on the next, extending to the next verse. that the verse continues. The next verse actually talks about what would happen if she did stray. That if you did stray, vat kisatis, it says if you did stray. So he wants you to read it, chinaki at kisatis. You'll be strangled if you did stray. So so in fact, it could be read that he is warning her also the other side of the coin. He's warning her about if she did stray, she'll be strangled. So the Gemara says, Bishlam al Rabbi Meir, Hainu dichsiv hinaki. Now let's go back the other way then. So it makes sense according to Rabbi Meir that it says hinaki without the yud. Ella, because it wants you to be able to read it as chinaki, that's going on the next pasuk also, that if she did stray, she gets chenek, she gets strangulation. Well, if according to Rabbi Chanina, it's not necessary to have that other side presented. Why did it write the word without the yud? Ella Rabbi Chanina Gamliel Lamali, why do I need that? So it's true, he says it's necessary. Salka daita chamina, I might have thought to say, im lo shachavish, if she didn't lie with a man, hinaki, she'll be clean. V'im shacha, but if she did, lo hinaki v'lo hinaki, I might have said, nothing happens to her if she did stray. If she didn't stray, so she'll be clean. And she'll get a blessing even. We understand that to mean she'll get a blessing. But if she did stray, maybe I would think nothing happens. She's not clean, meaning she doesn't get the blessing. She doesn't get strangled. She did something wrong, but she doesn't get punished. That's what I might have thought. Kamash Malan, that's why the Torah had to express that actually there would be a punishment by saying hinaki, she'll be clean, but writing it in a way that can also be read as hinaki, she'll be strangled. So it teaches me to read it like Rabbi Meir is reading it really. Hinaki atim satis. You'll be strangled if you strayed. So even Rabbi Chanina says here it's necessary because by inference I would have just said that nothing happens to her. So I need it to tell me what actually would happen to her. Fine. Says the Gemara, another situation where we find a doubled condition is when it talks about a person who became tamei meis, ritually impure, by coming in contact or in the same room as a dead body. So there's a process of purification discussed in Parshas Chukas, where we take a paraduma, we burn the paraduma, the red heifer, we take its ashes, we mix it with water, and that's what's called mei chatas, the waters of the chatas. It means the waters from the paraduma with the ashes, and that's what's used to purify a person who is tamei meis. And there it says as follows. So Bishlam Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, makes sense. Hainu dichsiv. That's why the Torah says, "Hu yischata bo," he'll sprinkle with it, or purify with it, bayom hashalishi bayom hashavi, on the third day and on the second and on the seventh day. Bayom hashavi yitar, and on the seventh day he'll be pure. So you have to sprinkle it on the third day and on the seventh day. And then it says, V'imlo yischata, if you won't sprinkle the ashes on the person who's tamei, you won't be pure. So according to Rabbi Meir, you have to say both sides. If you do, then you'll be pure, and if you don't, then you won't be pure. According to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, why do I need to say the second half of the equation? Why do I have to say if you don't sprinkle, you won't be pure? I know that. If you'll sprinkle, then you'll be pure. I can figure out if you don't, then you won't. Why does it have to say the second side according to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel? So the Gemara says it's trichu is necessary. I might have thought to say mitzvah haza b'shlishi ubishvi. That yes, indeed, the mitzvah, the best way to do it is to sprinkle on both the third and the seventh day. But I might have said, but if you only did one, it still works. That would suffice. Kamash malan. That's what the Torah comes and teaches me when it says that, when it says the other side of the equation. It says, if you sprinkle on both days, you're pure. But if you don't on both days, then you're not. And don't think that one day would suffice. That's what Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says. It's necessary to, by inference I might have said, but one day is enough. If you do on both days, you'll be pure. But if you, if you sprinkle on the third and the seventh, you'll be pure. And I might have thought at least that one of them is good enough. That's why it was necessary to tell me the other side that no, if you don't sprinkle on both days, you won't be pure. Okay, now the Gemara asks just a general question that subsequently the Torah instructs us again how to purify a person over there in Parshas Chukas, and it says again, Bizat Torah Tamei Bayom HaShlishi Bayom HaShvi. And the pure one should sprinkle on the tamei person, on the impure person, on the third and the seventh day. Lamali, why do I need that? You already told me what to do. To do it on the third and the seventh day. Why is it repeating it? So it was necessary because Sagadai Dechamina, I might have thought to say Shlishi Limute Sheni, Shvi Limute Shishi. That when it says to do the third day, it means but not the second day, not earlier. And Shvi and the seventh day, Limute Shishi, and seventh day, not the sixth day. Don't do the second and the sixth. You gotta do at least the third and the seventh. Because if you do it too early, you're doing it too early. You're having less days of the purification process. But I might have said that if you do on the third and the eighth day, all you're doing is increasing the process, the length of time of the process. I might have said that's fine. Don't do the second and the sixth, but the third and the eighth, maybe even the fourth and the eighth, should suffice. Because you're adding days, you're just extending the process. Yeah, to shorten the process would not work, but maybe to extend the process would work. I might have thought that works. Kamash Malan, that's why the Torah says, it repeats that no, it's these specific days. Specifically on the third and the seventh day, you cannot do it on any other days. So actually, Rashi actually clarifies that the reason it said the third and the eighth and not the fourth and the eighth, Rashi says that the fourth and the eighth would actually work because what's the problem? So you're just sort of delaying the start of your purification process. So to do it on the fourth and the eighth would actually work. The problem is doing the third and the eighth, because that's too much time between the two sprinklings. So the Gemara was very specific in saying that you might think that the third and the eighth would work. Kamash Malan, it comes to tell me that it doesn't work. Okay, now another pasuk repeats it again. Actually, it's the same verse. It says, "V'chita'o bayom hashvi." He should sprinkle or purify on the seventh day, and again it repeats it. So, Lamali, why do I need that? So it says, it was necessary to tell me it, because I might have thought to say, Hanimili lekadshim. That which we say that you need to sprinkle twice, that's for kadshim. That's to be able to eat from a karban. Or lemikdash, the Gra changes it to be able to enter the Beis HaMikdash. I might have thought that for these more elevated matters of Kedusha, of holiness, that's where you need 2 sprinkles to purify the person. Abala Truma, but to be able to eat Truma, to be able to eat, for a Kohen, to be able to eat from Truma, which is holy, but it's not elevated to the status as Kachim, as Karbanos, as offerings. I might have thought that 1 sprinkling is enough. So that's why Kamashmon, that's why I had to repeat and sprinkle on the 7th. You gotta sprinkle that second time in order even to be able to eat Truma. Okay, so now we have a new Mishnah. So we're moving on from the topic of the double Tanai, the double condition. The Mishnah says as follows: Hamakadesh Esaisha, a man who betroths a woman v'amar, or tries to betroth her, and he says, Kasavar, actually he does betroth her, and then later he says, Kasavar ha'isi shi kahenes. I thought she was the daughter of a Kohen. V'arehi levaya, but turns out she's the daughter of a Levi. Now, he didn't think that because she claimed it. He just thought, for whatever reason, that she was the daughter of a Kohen. It turns out she was the daughter of a Levi. And he wants to renege on the Kiddushin because he was mistaken. Or the opposite, Leviya v'harikanes, he thought she was the daughter of a Levi, turns out she's the daughter of a Kohen. He wanted the daughter of a Levi, not the daughter of a Kohen. Aniya v'hariyashir, he thought she was poor and turns out she's rich. And he wanted a poor girl, easier to please, and it turns out that she grew up in a wealthy household. Ashir v'harehi aniya, or he wanted a rich girl with a nice dowry, and it turned out that, actually I don't know about the dowry, because that actually could change things if he expected one thing and didn't, but he thought in general she was from a rich family, it turned out she was from a poor family. Harei zu mikudeshes, the Kiddushin is still good, so she didn't trick him, he for some reason thought this, that's his own mistake. As long as she didn't deceive him, then the Kiddushin stands. Ha'omar li'isha ariat mikudeshes li la'achar she'es gayer. If a man says to a woman, you are mikudeshes to me after I convert. So he's not Jewish. He gives her Kiddushin and he says it should take effect after I convert. Or she's not Jewish. And he gives her on condition that it should take effect after she converts. Or he's an eved, he's a slave, and he says, he's an eved Kanani. Eved Kanani is halfway converted, but he can't do Kiddushin, so to a Jewish woman. So after Sheshtacher, he says, after I am freed, he's a Canaanite slave, he gives it to a Jewish woman, he says, after I'm freed, this should be Kiddushin. Or she's a Shifcha Canaanis, she's the Canaanite slave, and he's a Jewish man, and he says, this should be Kiddushin after you are freed. Or she's a married woman, and he says to her, this should be Kiddushin after your husband dies. Or he's married to her sister, and therefore he can't marry her, but he says, after your sister dies, it should be Kiddushin. She's fallen to Yibum, and he says, after your Yevama gives you Chalitza, in all those cases, the Kiddushin does not work. So again, just to review the cases, all these cases doesn't work. He's not Jewish, he says it should be Kiddushin after I convert. Or she's not Jewish, he says after she converts. Or he's an Eved, he's a slave, he says after I'm freed. Or she's a slave, and he says after you're freed. Or she's married, and he says after your husband dies. Or he's married to her sister, and he says after it should be Kiddushin to you after your sister dies. Because he can't marry two sisters, but if she dies, if his wife dies, he can marry his wife's sister then. Or she's fallen to Yibum, and he says after your Yavam gives you Chalitza instead of Yibum. So in all those cases, the Kiddushin does not work. Because in all those cases, she's currently not available to be married, either because of something with him or something with her, and you can't give Kiddushin at that point, even on condition that it should take effect later. And so to a man who tells his friend, Im yalda ishtecha nekeva harizu mikudeshes li. Eina mikudeshes. He says to a woman, or to a friend, he says, if your wife gives birth to a girl, she should be mikudeshes to me. But the wife has not yet given birth to a girl. Seemingly she hasn't even conceived yet. So there it's lobo olam, it's not in the world. The child's not in the world yet. The Kiddushin can't work. There is a continuation in the Mishnah, which is in parentheses, and it's a question about whether this is properly in the Mishnah or not. It's seemingly not in the Mishnah, but we'll read it anyways. It says, "Im haisa ishes chaver mu'beres hokarubra." If the wife was pregnant, though, in this case, if his friend's wife was pregnant and it was hokarubra and it was clear that she was pregnant, divar of kayamins, then actually it works. And if she gives birth to a girl, she's mikudeshes. The Kiddushin on the fetus works, but that's because it's bala olam already. It's considered that she's already in the world, and therefore the father, the will-be father, can accept Kiddushin on behalf of the soon-to-be-born child. The Gemara is going to make a similar statement, and that's why it's a question of whether it's actually in the Mishnah, because if the Gemara says it, then it seems it wasn't in the Mishnah. Or at least from the discussion that the Gemara has about it. So, okay, fine. So we'll see that later, but not with this Amud, but we'll see that subsequently. So anyways, fine. So but the last case was that a man tells his friend that here's Kiddushin, that if you have a girl, I'll be Mekudeshes to her. Mishnah says, at least where the wife's not even, there's no fetus yet, there's no conception yet, at least in that case, the Kiddushin will not work, even if they later do give birth to a girl. Okay. Says the Gemara Tanakh Hasim. We're learning a Mishnah over there. Over there in this case is in Maseches Trumos. The Mishnah says, Ein tormin min atalosh ala mechubar. You're not allowed to separate truma from talosh, from that which is already separated, something that's picked, to that which is still attached to the ground. V'im taram ein truma, so truma, and if you try, the truma is not truma. So you have your wheat crop growing, and you have harvested wheat, and you have to separate truma to give to the Kohen. So you say, well, I'm going to eventually have to separate truma from what's growing. Let me just separate it from what I have now, that it should take effect on that what's growing will be considered already that the truma is separated. So the Mishnah says that does not work because it's still growing. It's not you can't separate truma on that which is still growing. So fine. Says the Gemara, Ba'amine Rav Asi me Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Asi asked a question of Rabbi Yochanan. Amar, if a man said as follows, Peiros arugazu tlushim, the fruit, the produce of this this aruga, this area of the field, which are already cut, Yiyu truma peiros arugazu mechubarim, should be truma on that which is still growing. Oh, or peiros arugazu mechubarim, or the fruits, the produce of this patch of the field that's growing, you truma peiros arugazu tlushim, should be truma for the part that is not that is already harvested. But he says, and this is what changes the case, when they get harvested, Vinitlushu, and then they get harvested, mahu, what's the halacha? So the Mishnah that we quoted talked about where he said the picked ones should be truma on the growing ones. Now, so that's where the Mishnah said it doesn't work. But what Rav Asi is asking is, what if he says the picked one should be truma on that which is growing when it gets harvested? To take effect only once it's harvested. So right now, it's true, you can't take truma from it, but I'm not taking truma on behalf of it now. I'm taking it now to take effect when I harvest the part that's growing. Or vice versa. I say on the part that's growing, this should be truma when it gets harvested on behalf of another section. So does that work? Says the Gemara, Amar le, he said to him, so Rabbi Yochanan answered, Kol shebiyado, anything that's in your hands to do, Lav k'mechusar ma'isadami, it's now considered that it's missing an action, and therefore it works. Since it's in my hands to harvest it, to separate it, so it's not lacking in making such a condition. If I couldn't do it myself, if I wasn't able to harvest it, so I can't say that it should be that it should be truma when it gets harvested, or it should be truma, or this should be truma for it when it gets harvested. Because it's not in my control to harvest it, so then I can't affect a change on it. However, if it's anyways in my control and I can do it whenever I want, so right now I'm allowed to say that it should be truma when it gets harvested, or this should be truma for it when it gets harvested. So Esvei, we ask a contradiction on that principle that he lays out. We ask a contradiction from our Mishnah. So again, the principle is that if it's in your hands to do it, so you can do it right. You can kind of set it in motion now. Since it's in his hands to harvest it, he can set things in motion now that when it gets harvested, it will be truma, or truma will be taken on its behalf. So we have a contradiction from our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says, "Ha'omer li'isharei mikudeshes li la'achar she'esgayer." A man says to a woman, "You are mikudeshes to me after I convert." or la'achar shtisgairi, or after you convert, because she's not Jewish, or la'achar she'ishtachar, or after I get freed as a slave, la'achar tishtachari, or after you get freed, la'achar she'yamas ba'aleich, after your husband dies, la'achar she'yamas ta'achoseich, after your sister dies, who's my wife. So if the man says any of that, or la'achar she'yachol tzleich yivimech, or after your yavam gives you chalitza, you'll be mekudeshes to me. Any of those cases we said eina mekudeshes, the kiddushin is no good. Says the Gemara, bishlam akulu la biyadam. All of those make sense because they're not in his hands to do it. He cannot convert her. He cannot free himself as a slave. He cannot free her as a slave. She's not his slave. He cannot arrange for her sister to die, his wife to die. He cannot have the yavam give her chalitza. So in all those cases, it's not in his hands, so it makes sense that it can't work, the Kiddushin. He can't give a Kiddushin on condition for when such and such happens if such and such is not in his hands. Ela ger, but him converting, have a biyado. Says the Gemara, that's in his hands. He's in control if he converts. So just like when Rabbi Yochanan said that when it's in my hands to separate the truma, to harvest the produce, I'm allowed to set things in motion now, that when it gets harvested, it should be truma, or this should be truma on its behalf. So too, he should be able to say, and set in motion now, when I convert, the Kiddushin should take effect, because it's in his hands to convert. Says the Gemara, no, ger nami la biyado. No, it's not in his hands to convert. A person cannot convert on their own. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chia bar Abba saying, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, ger tzarech shlosha. A ger, a convert, needs 3, needs a beis din, needs a court of 3 to affect his conversion. Rashi says they need to witness his they have to bring him to the mikvah and tell him a little bit about the mitzvos. So, and where do we learn that? My time, what's the reason? We're on the top of the next page now. Mishpat ksiv bei. It says the word mishpat in the context of a ger, of a convert. It says mishpat echad yeh lachem kager ka'ezrach. You'll have one mishpat, and so it uses the word mishpat, which is like a judgment. So it needs a court. So it needs a court to convert somebody. And mi yemer demizdakiku le'hanitlasa. And who says that he'll get 3 people to agree to convert him, and therefore he is not in his hands, and that's why he's not able to say when I convert it should be a kiddushin, because it's not actually in his hands. If it was in his hands, then he'd be able to set it in motion now, because Rabbi Yochanan's principle is kol shebiyado, anything that's in your hands. It's not lacking in any act, and therefore you can set it in motion now. But Gerus conversion is not in the hands of the Gentile who wants to convert. He needs a beis din to help him, and therefore it's not in his hands, and therefore he can't say that it should be Kiddushin when I convert, because it's not in his hands whether and when he will convert. Okay, we'll continue here, Yimir Hashem, next time.